Hello, this is John welcoming you to the 2054th edition of the Enfield Talking newspaper, Dateline 30th of June 2016. We are sorry that we were unable to bring you the news last week. The room where we record the broadcast was being used for the European Union referendum, and we were unable to use it. We are supposed to be back to our normal service from this week, and hope to bring you the local news until the 15th of December, after which we will take a break for Christmas. I said we hope to be back to normal this week, but because of a major misunderstanding, I regret to tell you that I am the only reader. I'm not going to try to imitate female voices, but I'll try to give you as much variety as possible. Fortunately, we have Jason on the controls. I did the editing, and the production and distribution team is Lindsay, Jean and Phillip. Our title music is Country Rock Polka, composed by Pat Prilly, Fernand Bouillon, Harry Brewer, and performed by Jean-Jacques Perret, and is used with his kind permission. The local news stories that we will be reading, or I will be reading, come from our local newspapers, the Enfield Gazette and Advertiser, and the Enfield Independent, and are their copyright. The events information has been collated by us from other sources. The local news headlines this week include how Enfield voted in the referendum, the council's plan to charge you £60 to collect your green waste, and the local nurse who stole over £250,000 from the National Health Service. Before the news, I have to tell you sunrise and sunset times for tomorrow, the 1st of July, are 04:48 and 21:21. Do get in touch with us to share your own news and special announcements. We love to hear from you. If you have any comments about the Enfield Talking newspaper, please phone Diane de Jersey on 020 8805 6578. She is your listener's representative and will be pleased to help you. Turn to the first item of local news, which concerns the referendum. Enfield voted for Britain to remain in the European Union. The borough's results were announced at Lee Valley Leisure Centre at around 4:30 a.m. on Friday morning, an hour and a half later than scheduled. Of 136,410 people who voted, 68.8% of the Enfield electorate, 76,425 chose Remain, while 60,481 opted for Leave. The results were revealed at the end of a night where 51.9% of the UK public has voted for the country to leave the European Union. Not long after the final result was confirmed, Prime Minister David Cameron resigned as a result of Brexit. Enfield Southgate MP David Burrows, who campaigned for Leave, said, despite losing the battle in the borough, he was very happy his side had won the war. He said, "There was so much support for leaving in traditional Labour areas like Jubilee Ward and Enfield Lock. People have come from all walks of life to have their say." People were most concerned about finance and migration, and that is what has swung it. The Enfield result is okay. We played our part, but I am delighted that honest and hard-working voters have been rewarded. Mr. Burrows was one of 84 pro-Leave Tory MPs who wrote a letter to Mr. Cameron offering their support. But just after 8 a.m, the Prime Minister announced he would be resigning. Mr. Burrows admitted he was surprised. The PM had chosen to step down so quickly. He said, "It is sad that he has decided to step down, something that is entirely his own decision. The priority now is to ensure there is stability and MPs support our new leader. I have ideas as to who I would like to see as the new leader. Their primary purpose will be to take the lead in our negotiations with the European Union. The speed of the news does surprise me, but the Prime Minister has always been one to take an unexpected decision. That said, leaving EU is the main decision of the past 24 hours. There is a great need to celebrate our Independence Day. Labour MPs Joan Ryan and Kate Osamore, who both backed Remain, have admitted their disappointment at the result, but would accept the opinions of the public. Mrs. Osamore said, "Democracy has spoken. We must respect the outcome and work closely together to form how Britain will look. It was very close, so they need to work with the Remainers." It is always very disappointing if you campaign for something and do not win. But there is a reason for this. People are disconnected from politics. This has been going on for some time and did not just happen overnight. The Edmonton MP also firmly supported Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, whose position is under serious threat after criticism for his campaigning for Remain. Mrs. Osamore said, "I have confidence in Jeremy Corbyn. The membership voted for him, and I respect democracy, and he has only been leader for 9 months." Mrs. Ryan, MP for Enfield North, said she would wait on the outcome of meetings within the shadow cabinet before taking a stance on Mr. Corbyn's future. She said, "There is a sense of calm after the result, and I think that will put us in good stead. It is important to have a period of calm to consider people's jobs and securities. I firmly believe remaining would have been the best result, but the voters have spoken." And you may, of course, just have noticed how far events have moved on since these local papers were printed. And now we have some local reactions to that news item and the result, and this first one is from George Sava, who is a Labour councillor for Hazelbury Ward. Last week's Brexit referendum result may have been a disappointment to the vast majority of Londoners, but I am pleased that the majority of Enfield's electorate, 57%, voted with their feet to remain. In fact, only 5 London boroughs voted to leave, whilst 27 voted remain. The Leave camp had offered the promised land when we exit the European Union, but only time will tell, and whether we will be forgiven by future generations. The Labour Party, both nationally and locally, was united on this issue. The Tories, as always, were divided on the European issue, and David Cameron is now paying the price. I honestly believe in years to come all of us will feel the pinch of leaving the EU, including the little things that we take for granted. Holidays overseas will inevitably get more expensive, and we have to be more selective on our destinations. We will no longer be eligible for EU compensation if our flights are delayed or cancelled, unless the UK changes its law and things like visa requirements and duty-free will be reinstalled. On June the 23rd, we didn't win back our sovereignty, but we strapped on a straitjacket extra tight. And one other comment is from David Flint, the chairman of Enfield Green Party. Enfield Green Party regrets the decision to leave the EU, but we recognise that it is the decision of the people. Many things, however, will not change. Geographically, culturally and politically, we will still be part of Europe. And our sovereignty will still be limited by a web of international treaties and relationships. As we unweave the strands labelled EU, there are some things we'll be glad to see go. Of these, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, TTIP, the secret treaty that seeks to make our Parliament subject to corporate courts, is the most toxic. But some things we should keep. Our EU membership provides useful protections for our health, human rights and environment. There is nothing at all un-British about such protections, which were often pioneered by the UK before joining the EU. On both these, the UK government has taken the wrong side, backing TTIP and undermining our rights. As we leave, those of us, clearly a majority, who reject TTIP and value these protections need to watch what's being done in our name. We need, immediately, to insist on open access to the negotiating texts of the agreements that will replace our EU membership. And we need to organise to resist the underhand attacks on our rights that the Tories will make in the name of UK independence. And finally, for those of you who are a little fed up with the referendum, here's a lighter story. A polling station in Enfield had to remove its England flags after complaints they might influence the EU referendum vote. Mayfield Cricket Club in Palmer's Green had hung multiple St George flags in support of England, the football team, at Euro 2016. However, some voters complained it made the polling station look like an English Defence League rally. Enfield Council spokesman Andrew Golder said the flags were removed at 8 a.m. and the authority was confident nobody's vote had been disrupted. He said St George's flags were hanging in the private sports club as part of the club's celebration of Euro 2016. They were removed promptly this morning by Enfield Council staff. The Electoral Commission said there was nothing against the law about having flags in a polling station, and the club had taken down the flags voluntarily. Now I referred to the possible charge for collecting your green waste. Free weekly green bin collections are to be scrapped due to council cuts. With Enfield Council having to make £56 million in savings, they are currently consulting the public on proposals to either provide a free fortnightly green waste collection or a weekly collection that will cost £60 a year. There will be no option to keep the current weekly green collection despite being included in the current council tax bill. Councillor Joanne Laban, deputy leader of the Conservative group, said the proposed £60 charge was a garden tax on Enfield. She said, the proposal to go to either fortnightly collection or paid-for weekly collection is not good for the residents of Enfield. People will simply opt out of the system altogether rather than pay the cost if we go to the charging method, therefore reducing the amount we recycle. The fortnightly collection offer is also bad news, as people will have to keep their waste longer, which will only create extra bags left by the curbside, which is not the point of the wheelie bin service. Residents pay council tax and they deserve to have a proper choice, not a change forced upon them, which is essentially what this is. A large number of the public have little or no confidence in consultations run by the council, and either option will be rammed through regardless of people's views. After opening last week, people will have plenty of time to offer their opinion, as the consultation will remain open until September the 2nd. So far, opinion is split among people on whether removing the free weekly green bin collection is a good idea and what option they would choose to replace it. Sian Carlyle wrote on a community Facebook forum, "It's hard, as I think food waste needs to be collected weekly, but not garden waste, and we never have anywhere near a full bill of combined green waste. A separate food waste bin for weekly collection proposal makes sense, but I would want to be able to use a full-size bin still, and not a smaller one that foxes could get into." Hearing about what happens in other areas, though, we are very lucky to have all 3 bins collected weekly. Rupesh Taylor said, "In the summer, the smell would be awful. I wouldn't be able to do any gardening. One weekend of cleaning half the garden, and the bin is full." Carey Annesley wrote on the same forum thread, "It wouldn't be so bad and also one that opened on a Monday after a weekend gardening." The thing that bugs me the most, however, is that the council had a big drive to encourage residents to recycle. They provided the bins, and we changed our habits accordingly. Now they want to either provide us with yet another bin, or put on an additional cost to what we already pay. That's my sticking point. Enfield Council's Cabinet Member for Environment, Councillor Daniel Anderson, said many other councils now collected bins fortnightly or charge for the service. He said, "We would continue to provide a weekly black bin collection and blue bin recycling service." And now we come to the story about the theft from the NHS. A hospital nurse working in the UK unlawfully has been jailed after swindling the NHS and benefit system out of hundreds of thousands of pounds. The fraudster of Oxford Road, Enfield, assumed the false identity of Antoinette Caidi as part of an organised scam by a couple since jailed who sold fake identities. The scam enabled her to obtain UK citizenship, qualify as a nurse, and falsely obtain tax credits and income support payments. She was sentenced to 33 months in prison at Croydon Crown Court last week after being convicted in March of stealing £265,000 from the NHS in training and bursary costs and £90,000 from the Department for Work and Pensions. The trial followed a lengthy joint investigation by the NHS and Department of Work and Pensions fraud teams. Antoinette Caidi, her true identity is still unknown to the authorities, had posed with another woman fraudster as sisters, both claiming to come from Togo in West Africa. They are not related and are of different nationalities. The fake sibling, Louise Caidi from East Ham, East London, also received a 33-month jail term, having stolen £204,000 from the Department of Work and Pensions in false tax credits and income support and housing benefits. She, too, has refused to reveal her true identity. The two women both enrolled in courses to study nursing. Antoinette at Greenwich University and the University of Hertfordshire, and Louise at Southbank University in London. Louise was studying at the time of her arrest in March last year and consequently was unable to complete the course. Antoinette had previously qualified as a nurse, registering with the Nursing and Midwifery Council. At the time of her arrest, she was working at Whittington Hospital in Archway. She had also worked at the Royal Free Hospital in Hampstead and the Queen Elizabeth II Hospital in Welwyn Garden City. The two had denied all the charges, but changed their pleas to guilty on the 6th day of their trial back in March. Sue Frith, Managing Director NHS Protect, said, "These were serious offences committed over a long period of time with the intent of diverting public money away from the NHS and other government agencies. The sentences reflect this and should send out a warning to those intending to defraud the NHS." And now we have another NHS story concerning the North Middlesex Hospital. Politicians are calling for extra doctors to help deal with the crisis in accident and emergency at North Middlesex University Hospital, and are also discussing the role of the Royal Free Hospitals Trust in taking to help alleviate the crisis. North London MPs met Julie Lowe, North Middlesex's chief executive, to discuss the current situation and any potential risks to patients which could cause the closure of the A&E department at the hospital in Stirling Way, Edmonton. Enfield North MP Joan Ryan said she was calling on Health Minister Ben Gummer to intervene by providing more doctors and for a pledge from the Prime Minister David Cameron that the casualty department will be protected in the short and long term. Mrs. Ryan and Edmonton MP Kate Osamore joined Wood Green and Hornsey MP Catherine West in the meeting with Mrs. Lowe. They will be getting regular updates on North Middlesex efforts to improve. Mrs. Ryan said, "Improving the care of patients is my top priority. While I have serious concerns about how this situation has been allowed to deteriorate, to call for a change in the hospital's leadership at this stage could lead to further turmoil and undermine any recovery." Earlier this month, the Care Quality Commission health watchdog said the casualty department needed to improve urgently after an unannounced inspection in April had revealed delays in assessing patients, moving them to wards, and too few middle-grade doctors and consultants. It set a deadline of August the 26th to see significant improvements. Mrs. Lowe accepted that the hospital needs to work much faster to address the problems highlighted by inspectors. Junior doctors are no longer left without senior support in A&E and the paediatric emergency department. She said it was working hard to fill vacancies for middle-grade doctors and consultants in A&E, with some on loan from Barnet Hospital as a short-term solution. Mrs. Osamore and Mrs. Ryan have also held meetings with David Sloman, the Chief Executive of the Royal Free London NHS Foundation Trust. Ms. Ryan said the aim was to discuss the steps they are taking to support North Middlesex in managing this crisis. The Royal Free took over Chase Farm Hospital in the Ridgeway, Enfield, in 2014, following the closure of its A&E and maternity departments, and Barnet Hospital, which does have an A&E department. Back to the problems in the Labour Party now. Edmonton MP Kate Osamore has taken on a new role in the shadow cabinet after several sackings and resignations over the weekend. Ms. Osamore has been named Shadow International Development Secretary, which promotes the improvement of poorer countries and challenges the government's minister for the role, Justine Greening. Elected as an MP in May 2015, she previously worked as Shadow Minister for Women and Equalities. She is one of 10 MPs starting new roles in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet this morning, after numerous Labour MPs left their jobs on Saturday and Sunday. After Hilary Benn was sacked by Mr Corbyn, more than 40 other shadow secretaries and ministers have resigned, and the Labour Party leader faces a no-confidence vote. Ms Osamore was one of 36 Labour MPs to nominate Mr Corbyn for leader and has been contacted for comment. She tweeted on Sunday, "Labour Party needs to unite behind our leader. We cannot descend into infighting at this critical stage." Now we have a letter from Peter Smith of Devonia Gardens in Edmonton. I am a volunteer at the North Middlesex University Hospital and have been for about 15 years in what was called the Patients' Representative Forum, now called the Eye and Ears. Unfortunately, closing the Chase Farm A&E has not helped. There are problems with Whipps Cross as well, and Barnet has the same problem as NMUH. The NMUH has at times had to take Barnet patients because they cannot cope. Lack of money is a big factor. Lack of money is a big factor. Do not say the NHS is in deficit. It is a public-owned and run facility. The day the government says, like Greece, we are broke, only then can you say the NHS is in deficit. Unfortunately, the NMUH was not built with any expansion capacity. I don't care how many doctors or nurses you throw at it, it will continue to have problems. Unfortunately, the last bit of property at the NMUH site that would allow expansion, the Trust Board has, because it is strapped for cash, decided, or it was ordered to, sell to a firm that want to convert it into a school. So the Quality Care Commission and NHS England want it to get its act together and help, not hinder. And our MPs are not a lot of help, all wind and no blow. So a question: if they close the A&E and emergency care facility, where do the patients go? And this is a story about disabled pupils in Enfield. Disabled students said they were honoured to compete at the Olympic Park after finishing third in a London-wide competition. Enfield took bronze in their first ever Panathlon final, a mini Paralympics for disabled children, featuring 1,200 competitors from all 32 boroughs, held at the Copper Box Arena. Pupils from West Leigh School represented Enfield in games such as boccia, table cricket, wheelchair races and field athletics. Team manager Val Harnett said, "We didn't come here with the intention of winning. We just wanted to have a fun day so the kids could take in the experience. I told them to have fun, do their best and enjoy it. And that's exactly what they've done. Just being here makes us winners." West Leigh pupil Matthew Key, 15, said, "It feels really great, and I think it means I've come a long way in playing polybat. I've met new people, made new friends, and got better at sports. It's such an honour to be here." The title was won by Barking and Dagenham. Croydon finished second and Harrow came fourth. Sarah Back, a teacher at Woodland School who coached the Harrow team, said, "We've got lots of smiling children. It's fantastic because it links with a lot of the class curriculum at the moment, which is around the Olympics. It gives them a great sense of wider achievement. It's been a really positive experience for them." And now we have a letter from a Mr. King of Cuckoo Hall Lane, Edmonton. "So now we have another mayor pretending to be green, just like the other two before her. If they are so green, why don't they all go to the Green Party? I suppose we will see more speed humps now, along with gated roads, cycle lanes and bus lanes, all causing more traffic and pollution. Slow-moving traffic causes more pollution. For the non-believers, please Google this. I believed it before. I Googled it and found that it was correct. I suggest that all the letters written from people who support cycle lanes get on their bicycles, if they have them, or cars, if they have one, and take a look to see how much these cycle lanes are not getting used. Walthamstow, Woolwich, Boreham Wood, Chingford, Bounds Green and Cambridge Road in Edmonton, and beyond, are always mostly empty. I see this is my job takes me to these places, and I observe it. Enfield councillors should get out of their offices and go and have a good look at this, as I do. The Mayor of Liverpool has done away with 20 bus lanes out of 24 and got traffic moving again. Enfield Council should take a leaf out of his book and do the same. Installing cycle lanes won't encourage cyclists to get on bicycles. It won't do anything for diabetics or obese people. There is an old saying, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. One thing I have been wondering, are we going to see the likes of Daniel Anderson, Chris Bond or Doug Taylor, all local councillors, on bicycles any time soon? And if so, how long and how far will they cycle? Oh, and London Mayor Sadiq Khan. And now we have an item about what was the Enfield Preservation Society. Formed 80 years ago amid a public revolt over council plans to build on a cherished beauty spot, the Enfield Society has kept a watchful eye on the borough's unfolding future while guarding its heritage. Now the story of its accomplishments over those 8 decades is being told in a fascinating free exhibition. The Enfield Society, 80 Years of Action, running for the next 7 months at the Dugdale Centre in London Road, Enfield Town. The venue's main foyer and galleries showcase the Society's key events and major achievements with glass display cases featuring photographs, documents, artifacts, models and memorabilia. Can you imagine the almighty outcry there would be nowadays if Enfield Council proposed building a town hall on Chase Green in Chase Side? In 1935, that's precisely what was proposed by Enfield District Council, the forerunner of the present-day local authority. It provoked outrage and prompted the Reverend Ebenezer Rees, vicar of Christ Church in Chase Side, to set up a campaign to save what was common land, quote, belonging to the people. Thousands of signatures were collected for a petition, and a well-attended public meeting was held at Oddfellows Hall in Old Park Avenue. The council underestimated the strength of public opposition and reluctantly scrapped the plan. That victory led directly to the founding of the Enfield Preservation Society, which later shortened its name to become the Enfield Society, said member Bob Fowler. Preserving the borough's historic buildings is still its priority, but conservation of the environment has also been a big part of what it does. It has played a major role in shaping the landscape of the borough and protecting its treasured heritage for future generations. Notable among its achievements are, back in 1938, saving library gardens in Church Street, Enfield, from being built on, and helping the council transform the neglected stretch of the New River, which runs through Enfield town, into a beautiful recreational amenity with £1.8 million of heritage lottery cash. The Society has also planted thousands of trees, is involved in campaigns to restore the derelict Grade 2 listed Broomfield House mansion in Broomfield Park, Palmer's Green, and the abandoned Grade 2 listed Trent Park mansion in Snakes Lane, Cockfosters, and has fought to stop Chase Green being used for licensed events, as well as being a buttress against development of the Greenbelt. The Society has more than 1,700 members, which is a remarkable achievement in itself, added Mr. Fowler. But we are hoping this exhibition will show the public what an important job the Society does to safeguard Enfield's heritage, whilst at the same time stimulating interest and attracting new members to join. Now, I don't know whether we've ever read an advertisement in the Enfield Talking newspaper, but I intend to do so today because it's one placed by Enfield Council and the Metropolitan Police, and I think it's important and helpful for all of us to know about it. It headed, "Don't be a victim of distraction, burglary or bogus callers." These criminals are often highly organised, work alone or in pairs, and operate under an array of disguises, guises, including utility company personnel, door-to-door salespeople, care workers and nurses, builders and gardeners, council staff, police officers. When someone knocks at the door, stop and think. Are you expecting anyone? If you're not sure, don't open the door. The next pieces of advice may be difficult if you're visually impaired, but the advert goes on to say, use your door viewer or look through your front window to see who is there. Use all door devices, including door chains. Always ask for an ID or any associated paperwork. Get them to pass these through the letterbox. If you have any doubt, you should ring the company they say they are from independently. Never ring the number given by the caller, but instead locate it from another source, e.g. the internet, phone book or directory inquiries. Extra measures. Ensure that your back door is always shut and locked when answering the front door. Never keep large sums of money in the house. Keep valuables and items of sentimental value where they are not easily accessible. Keep documents containing personal details out of sight, for example, passport, utility bills, bank statements, etc. And keep your keys in a safe place and not on display. And don't hesitate to call the police if you are suspicious or feel that the caller may be bogus. If someone forces entry or enters your home without permission, call the police also if you notice valuables or money have gone missing shortly after anyone has visited, and whenever you think a crime has been or is about to be committed. I hope you never need to follow the advice in the advert, but I think it's always better to be safe than sorry. We have a very moving story here about a drummer who has terminal lung cancer who married his bride after a hospice organised his wedding in just 24 hours. Simon Cooper from Oakwood was due to marry girlfriend Claire Hempstead in December, but is now living at the North London Hospice in Finchley. But with the help of staff, family, friends and generous residents, their ceremony took place on Tuesday, a fortnight before their engagement party was meant to happen. He said, "This entire day has been amazing. The hospice helped sort everything. We told them what we wanted for the ceremony, the flowers, Claire's dress, and they sorted it out. We have some very good friends." Mr. Cooper, a former photographer for Status Quo, admitted the last-minute wedding was his wife's idea. Born with a blocked bowel and diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at birth, Mr. Cooper overcame these obstacles to pursue his dream to be a professional musician. He became drummer for Chas and Dave after being talent-spotted at the Chickenshed Theatre by the Stars, and played gigs with his oxygen cylinder hidden behind his drum kit. In 2012, he received a call in the middle of the night saying there was a set of lungs ready for him. His second transplant lasted 17 hours, but allowed him to live a normal life. But in January of this year, 4 years after his transplant, he was diagnosed with incurable cancer in the transplanted lung. The new Mrs. Cooper said that while the year had been difficult and the day had a twinge of sadness, it was also a day of celebration. She said, "I am very happy, seeing how everyone came at the last minute and getting married to the man I love. It's wonderful." Among the guests were Chas and Dave, who provided the music. The couple's first dance was London Girls, but with the lyrics changed to Oxford Girls after Mrs. Cooper's hometown. Chas said, "Simon is a great drummer and, as they say in Australia, a top bloke. He has our sense of humour." Another story in slightly similar vein. After losing her mother to a brain tumour just before Christmas, 10-year-old Angelina Potzu decided to, it's hyphenated, it's broken, the line's broken, it's Pozutu, decided to hold a charity raffle and raised nearly £2,000. The Year 5 student at Oakthorpe Primary in Palmer's Green, with the help of her teachers, got support from businesses, supermarkets and shops, as well as the community, to offer prizes to raise money for the brain tumour charity. They had hoped to raise £500, but after the full generosity of Enfield was counted up, they had managed to raise £1,900. Angelina said, "I'm pleased and proud. The moment just kept on going up and up. the amount just kept on going up and up. All my friends all wanted to help. It was good I was able to do something like this for my mum. I want to do more stuff like this. Her mum, Athy, died last year, leaving Angelina, her dad, and her 3-year-old brother. She was supported by pastoral carer Sarah Demetrios at Oakthorpe, who was the first person Angelina told about wanting to raise money, and who first set the wheels in motion. Mrs. Demetrios said, "We went around loads of shops and companies and got some amazing prizes. Parents and other community people clubbed together for an iPad mini. Hamleys sent bears and swing sets, and all the children and teachers got on board. All the money will go to researching brain tumours, which is a great result." Angelina's form teacher, Jane Hulston, said when it came to the prize draw, her hard work paid off as she managed to get the top prize in her own raffle. She said when it came to the draw, Angela was the one pulling the tickets out. The iPad was the first prize on offer. She pulled the ticket, and it was her own name. The shock on her face, you could tell it hadn't been planned. Everyone thought it was so funny and were so pleased for her. I think that was her mum helping her out, her way of saying, "Thanks, love." I think Angelina is amazing. She's incredibly brave and modest. She should be very proud of what she's done. Telling the other children what had happened, why we were running the raffle, we obviously had to be very careful, and they were shocked. But all the kids have been sympathetic, supportive, and compassionate, and something good has managed to come out of it all. And now turning to more sporting matters. After months of grueling training, Summer Rivers can finally smile. She has been selected for the Flag American football team of Great Britain. Flag is the non-contact version of American football, where tackles are made by pulling off a flag worn by the players, and her selection at Summer is officially one of the best. It is not an Olympic sport and won't be featured in Rio in August. But Summer, 19, is hoping that she will be able to compete in 2024 and to make her country proud. Summer, who lives with her mum, Davina, and 2 younger sisters, Jodie, 16, Layla, 10, said, "I play both contact and flag and love them both. American football is a really fast sport that requires a lot of thinking. You have to make split-second decisions and think on your feet. I love the adrenaline, the buzz and the energy. It makes me feel strong. Strength is something that Summer has an abundance of." Her dad, the man she describes as her inspiration and role model, died in November last year at the age of 49, following a long battle with motor neurone disease. Eric Rivers of Gordon Road, Enfield, became a familiar face in the borough after he was featured on BBC TV programme DIY SOS 5 years ago. The programme detailed the modifications of Eric and Davina's home needed in the wake of his MND diagnosis in 2010. Summer said, "It's been a tough time. I miss my dad every day. He was an amazing man and always taught me to believe in myself and strive for everything. I miss the fact he can never train with me or see me and how much I have achieved." She proudly wears a bracelet that her dad gave her just 3 days before he died, which bears Nelson Mandela's prison number, 46664. She explained, "I always wear this. It's really special to me. Nelson Mandela and my dad were both strong, proud men who fought for what they believed in." Although her dad was her inspiration, it was the 2012 Olympics in London that prompted Summer to start training. She said, "It was like a switch clicked in me. I saw all these amazing athletes and just thought, I want to do that. And that's when I really started training. Now I train 2 or 3 times a day, and eat quite carefully, but I'm not too strict with food because when I was younger I had an eating disorder. It's a long, hard lesson, but I try to teach my little sisters. Be proud, be strong, and believe in yourselves, and you can achieve whatever you want to. The sounds of wartime tunes filled the streets of Enfield for Armed Forces Day. The Stowe Caledonian Pipe Band performed tunes from 2 world wars as they joined the borough's procession in Enfield town. The event on Sunday had a particular poignancy as it came just days before the centenary of the start of the Battle of the Somme on July the 1st, which claimed the lives of 1.3 million British, French and German soldiers during World War I. Also on the parade were RAF cadets from the Enfield and Southgate Squadron, Enfield Sea Cadets, and members of the Enfield branch of the Royal British Legion, including veterans of the Suez conflict. The parade started at Chaseside Primary School in Trinity Street, before heading to the War Memorial at Chase Green, and finished at the Civic Centre in Silver Street, where the Armed Forces flag was raised, watched by the Deputy Lieutenant of Enfield, Anne Cable, and Enfield Mayor Bernadette Lepage. 4 cadets who had excelled at training camps were presented with certificates of excellence. Organiser Brendan Farrell, who chairs Enfield Royal British Legion, said, "It went well, and the weather was beautiful. We've been holding the parade in Enfield for the last 10 years since Armed Forces Day was started," he added. The event finished with a reception at the Royal British Legion headquarters in Holt White Hill. Now I hope you're not eating while I read this one. A woman says she cannot look at a carrot after finding a snail in a packet of frozen vegetables. Katie Barnes bought the pack from her local Lidl in Edmonton, but when she and her partner Paul Taylor sat down for dinner, they realised they had an unwelcome addition to their meal. Mrs. Barnes of Croyland Road said she had not realised the snail was there until they sat down to eat and saw a shell nestled in amongst the veg. She said Paul was physically sick when he saw it. It was horrible. It has put us right off vegetables. I cannot look at a carrot since. We don't want anything to do with Lidl. It has put us right off. Mrs. Barnes said she contacted the Lidl customer service team as soon as she saw it, but was unhappy with the response and promised compensation, a £5 voucher, which she has still not received. She said I was told it would be investigated after I sent them pictures, but after a week I had heard nothing, so rang again, and it turned out they had not even seen the pictures as the attachment would not open on the email, but they hadn't told me. Frankly, they were really rude. I had to call them all the time and I never got a call back, and only one email. Lidl Communications Officer Sophie Lambert-Russell said they had initially sent out a voucher to Mrs. Barnes on June the 16th, and they had communicated with Mrs. Barnes on several occasions. Well, good luck to all concerned. An experienced charity cyclist is gearing up for his biggest challenge yet, an overnight ride from Portsmouth to London. Tim Simonet from Baker Street, Enfield, will be cycling 100 miles in one go from the Harbour City to the Imperial War Museum, starting at 2 a.m. on July the 3rd. The 55-year-old father of 2, who is raising money for Help for Heroes, has done 2 similar challenges in the last 2 years, raising £5,000. But he says those have always been spread over a couple of days, and this will be his toughest attempt. He said, "I'm a bit dubious, but once you get going, you realise it can actually be enjoyable. It's not an easy ride. There are a lot of hills to tackle, particularly over 100 miles in one day. I've been practicing by cycling between 20 and 40 miles every weekend. Help for Heroes is a good cause. My dad and uncle were in the army. There are a lot of injured people who, when the conflict is over, people just forget about. Whenever I think these rides are difficult, I see injured soldiers are doing them. That inspires me to keep going. Mr. Simonet said he aims to reach the museum by noon on July the 3rd, where he will be greeted by his family, meaning he aims to cover 100 miles in just 10 hours. An Enfield firm was named Care Provider of the Year at a Black Tie Awards ceremony. Home Care Preferred from Winchmore Hill won at the 2016 Health Investor Awards on June the 15th at the Grosvenor House Hotel, hosted by John Humphreys. Managing Director Ken Waterhouse, who has worked in the care industry for 25 years, said, For my staff to be recognised for their outstanding care work is a fantastic achievement for the whole team. Now we have a traffic story. Transport Secretary Pat McLaughlin is setting up a working party to consider if there is a case for improving access onto the M25 from Bullsmore Lane. He met residents from the Save Bullsmore Lane campaign and Enfield North MP Joan Ryan at Westminster on Monday and said he accepted that there was a real problem at the junction with the A10. During the 40-minute meeting, Mr. McLaughlin, who was presented with a letter from Enfield Council stressing support for another access road, said that improvements to the junction would go ahead, and Mrs. Ryan said Mrs. Ryan. She said Mr. McLaughlin had agreed that a long-term solution was needed, and he was planning to set up a working group with experts to see if there was a case for additional access onto the M25. Mrs. Ryan was pleased that Mr. McLaughlin had not closed the door on considering a new road to take lorries away from Bullsmore Lane, but said that if it went ahead, it was likely to be in a budget for 2020 or 2025. He made it clear that he is not giving us a guarantee, but it's an open door for us, she said. We are going to continue to make the case. An elderly man died following a collision with a lorry in Bullsmore Lane in December last year. A residents' association has criticised plans for a tower block built by Tottenham Hotspur as having a significant and fundamental flaws. The 500 White Hart Lane site on the border of Enfield and Haringey, around 1.5 miles from their ground, was bought by Spurs in 2008 as a possible relocation site for businesses affected by their stadium redevelopment. Now they plan to build 144 new homes on the site in 6-storey blocks, with the deadline for submitting the planning application due on Thursday. The club say they have made changes to the project after speaking to neighbours, including reducing the height of the blocks from 7 to 6 storeys, along with commercial buildings and a communal garden. However, the Devonshire Hill Residents Association still object to the plans, calling the changes token gestures. In their official statement, which is more than 2,000 words long, their objections include the height of the blocks, amount of houses being earmarked, lack of shops and amenities, and poor transport links. The association said, "Our neighbourhood is not a struggling and deprived area in need of bulldozer regeneration. It is a healthy, friendly suburb of 2-storey houses. Developers do not have the right to demand that exceptions must be made to council policies simply to increase their short-term profits dramatically. especially at the direct and long-term cost to the council and to the community. In short, development must solve problems, not create new ones. The statement goes on to say that despite the White Hart Lane address suggesting the site is near the football stadium, it is actually in a leafy residential area. It says, "We believe that the site would be ideally suited to neighbourhood-relevant retail, including a small supermarket. Given the complete absence of decent shopping facilities in the entire neighbourhood, it's reasonable that such an establishment would do very well." Richard Searer, head of planning for Tottenham Hotspur, said the homes would help the area, and they also plan other work in the area, including a new bus shelter and more parking spaces. He said, "Following a long period of local engagement, a number of design revisions have been made in direct response to consultation feedback. Most notably, a reduction in the height of the scheme from 7 stories to 6, and the inclusion of new retail facilities to support the demand of residents. We believe the latest designs meet all the aims of planning policy and will deliver an attractive and appropriate new residential community." Now a story about a plumber. A plumber from Edmonton has been selected as a regional finalist in a search to find Britain's top tradesperson. Hatti Hassan, 54, has seen off competition from tradesmen and women from across London and is now one step closer to the national final at Wembley. Before that, she has to impress the judges at the regional final on June the 28th. Mrs. Hassan, who trades under Stopcock's Women Plumbers, founded the all-woman plumbing company in 1990 and has worked in the profession for more than 26 years. She said, "I worked as a teacher for 8 years, but plumbing is such a male-dominated field, I really want to inspire other women to join the plumbing industry. I'm very passionate about my job and the plumbing industry. To win the title would be a dream come true, and it would be a testament to the work we do all over the country. The competition is run by Screwfix." A doctor who spent 11 days saving the lives of refugees on the beaches of Greece earlier this year has received an award. Dr. Christina Lopez-Paig of the Woodbury practice in Palmer's Green worked at the Moira camp in Lesbos in January, having travelled at her own expense. She was given a Champions Award by Refugee Welcome Enfield, a newly formed pressure group to get the public and the council to help welcome and house refugees in the borough. Dr. Lopez-Paig took clothes, blankets and tents donated by patients, along with medical supplies donated by Atkinson, chemist in Winchmore Hill, and volunteered in a 24-hour clinic in the refugee camp, offering medical assistance to refugee families. Despite the suffering she witnessed, Dr. Lopez said she is very positive about what volunteers can do to solve the crisis. She said, "It was shocking. I could not believe the number of people arriving, usually in tiny boats, in the middle of the night. It's madness, and you can't believe it when you come back home and it is so comfortable. I paid for all the fares and accommodation, but so many people also chipped in." Dr. Lopez-Paig went back to Greece on a family holiday last term with her 9-year-old daughter, and they visited the camp for a day so she could experience what it was like. Dr. Lopez-Paig said, "The experience was very good and very bad. I met some brilliant people, but so many people were also scared and traumatized. The boats had so many people in them they were sinking. Now I am back. I'll do anything to help here. The majority of people want to do something, but they don't know what." Firefighting festivities drew hundreds of people to celebrate a 150th anniversary party at the weekend. At a special day at Southgate Fire Station in High Street on Saturday, crews performed drills and rescue scenarios to mark 150 years of the London Fire Brigade's existence. Dancers from Enma, a cultural organisation representing the tradition and rich heritage of the southern Indian state of Kerala, performed their latest routines. Officers were dressed in a selection of historic firefighting gear, and an historic engine was on display. Entertainment included officers showing how they cut someone free from an overturned car, and rescuing a damsel in distress who turned out on closer inspection to be a firefighter dressed as a woman. Lucky youngsters even got to try on mini-kits and experience what it was like to see with a helmet on. And RAF, Army and St John's Ambulance cadets demonstrated their drilling and life-saving skills. Daniel Alley, manager for Southgate Fire Station, which opened in 1972, thanked all the businesses who supported the raffle and all the food businesses who helped with catering. He said, "The crowd loved the dancers and the displays. The open day was an absolute fantastic community effort to celebrate the anniversary. We had about 500 people come through the doors, and we will be having another one next year." Now we turn to sporting matters. Leo Smith was the star of a stunning bowling display from Enfield as they managed to beat the weather and secure a remarkable 6-wicket victory at home to Wembley in Division 2 of the Middlesex County Cricket League on Saturday. With rain disrupting much of the action across the league, Enfield managed to dodge the showers just enough to get a positive result in as they climbed up into third place in the table. Having won the toss and decided to bowl, the hosts took full advantage of the helpful conditions as they simply ripped through the Wembley batting line-up. None of the batsmen had any answers to an outstanding performance with the ball from Smith and Lee Robertson, who both bowled unchanged throughout the 22.5 overs of the visitors' innings, as no one was able to make it into double figures. Wembley initially subsided to 15 for 8, before a minor recovery saw them get up to 31 before being dismissed. Smith led the way by taking 7 wickets for 12 runs, while Robertson, 3 for 18, gave him excellent support. With a number of rain delays leaving Enfield facing a race against time to secure victory, they searched for quick runs as they looked to beat the weather. Jack Plum, 14, and Craig Williams, 10 not out, did the bulk of the scoring as the hosts overcame some good bowling from Sneh Shah, 4 for 18, to make it to 32 for 4 wickets and seal the win. Meanwhile, Winchmore Hill suffered the frustration of having to settle for a losing draw at home. A losing draw? I don't understand that. At home to high-flying Middlesex Tamil Sports and Social Club in Division 3, despite coming close to claiming victory. A rain-reduced match saw Morgan Pryor make 52 as the hosts reach 176 for 7 of 36 overs before declaring. Jack Irwin, 5 for 36, shone with the ball when the visitors replied, but Hill were unable to prize out the last 2 wickets as Middlesex Tamil Sports and Social Club closed on 124 for 8, after the minimum 20 overs required to constitute a match, with their faster rate of scoring enabling them to pick up the 4 points for a winning draw. And the weather proved to be the only winner, as Southgate's home match against Teddington in the top flight was abandoned because of rain. Hayden Morton made 36, and Michael Stevens chipped in with 25, as Southgate struggled to 76 for 6 in the play that was possible. Alistair Pollock, 3 for 8, and James Keatley, 3 for 29, shared the wickets between them. Southgate go to Richmond on Saturday, while Enfield visit Brondesbury and Winchmore Hill make the trip to South Hampstead. And having quoted an advert previously, I hope I might end on what I hope is a light note. I see there's an advert in this week's papers for Lavana Lodge, Enfield, which is a new building, and I don't know where it is, but it tells us that there are 2 and 3 bedroom apartments and a penthouse for between £650,000 and £1.6 million. I think I'd like to know where that is. We've reached the end of the programme for this week. I'm sorry for the lack of variety and the lack of other readers, but from me, John, and
Jason,
on controls, it's goodbye.
bye.
Please remember to turn over the address label in your postal packet. Put the memory stick into the packet and return it to us as soon as possible in readiness for the next edition. Don't forget you can call Diana Jersey regarding any help you may require in connection with Enfield Talking Newspaper on 020 8805 6578. Coming up next, the latest news and information for the Greater London area from InfoSound. The Enfield Talking Newspaper will be with you again in 1 week's time, I hope with a full complement of readers.